one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to ask the board to remain standing for a moment of silence as we ponder the importance of our work, as we endeavor to do what is in the best interest of all of our students, our staff, and our community. Thank you. And Julia, you will do the roll call.
John Bouquet,
Here.
Brian Carson,
Here.
Jessica Decker,
Here.
Jack Fisher,
Here.
Corey Holman,
Here.
Dan Lutley,
Here.
Jack O'Leary,
Here.
Chuck Pike,
Here.
and John Wawelski.
Here.
Thank you. And may I have a volunteer to read the mission statement? Jack?
Illinois Valley School District, in partnership with our community, stands committed to maximizing student potential, fostering lifelong learning, and promoting responsible citizenship.
Thank you, Jack. And may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. I would like to remind everyone that public comments are welcome. Put your hand up, give Julie your name, and you will be recognized. And our first presentation this evening is with the Wayne Pike Adult Literacy and Gary Linton.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, board. First one, wow, should come earlier. My presentation this evening is very simple. It's really just to get you to recognize what we do. We're a 30-year-old program, and it seems like in this area, either you know our program and love it, or you don't know anything about it. I'm trying to fix the latter. The Wayne Pike Adult Literacy Program, what we do is provide free tutoring to anybody who needs any kind of literacy help. Many of them are people looking for their GEDs. We do adult basic education. We do English as a second language. We work with challenged individuals. We tutor at both correctional facilities, both in Wayne and Pike, where our graduates have the lowest recidivism rate of any other occupants of the correctional facility. We do not get any state or federal funding. All of our funding is individual donation or grants. I spend a great deal of time writing grants. Our tutors are all volunteer. I am the only paid employee and I work part-time. But I have a wealth of 501c3 experience, so they hired me mostly for my marketing skills and grant writing. They've never had a professional such as myself in this position before. Most of our tutors are retired educators, though we are getting some younger folks in now. We just had a tutor workshop this past Monday in Milford, where we got some new younger tutors in. I don't know if you're aware, but just the GED part of it, the national average for passing the GED test the first time through, since GED changed the test several years ago, is 20%. In the past 2 years, 100% of our students passed it the first time through. Our program works. We tutor only in public locations. We have 20 permanent locations in Wayne and Pike, and another 20 that vary. When we need a certain location, people give them to us. But it's almost every church and every library, fire hall, and any other public location. Our tutors are insured, we're bonded, and we don't do anything other than a public location. Our process is, first you have to understand in Wayne and Pike, depending on which report you read, and the last one is about 5 years ago from the National Literacy Foundation, this area of Pennsylvania, the illiteracy rate, either illiterate functionally illiterate or below literacy standards is running about 14%. Now, aside from Delaware Valley, one of the best schools in the country, and I don't know too many graduates from this system that have been through our program, we have a lot of new people in this area, and they are part of our community, and we get a lot of that. If they have to study to progress in work, get a better position, or a raise, they come to us. If they need to study for ASVAB so they can go into the military, they come to us. If they want to study for their citizenship test, their driver's license, anything at all dealing with literacy, they come to us. We've had about 4,000 graduates in the past 30 years. We've trained over 450 tutors. We did a couple of years ago have a readathon with Delaware Valley, which we're very appreciative of, and we would like to continue that as a tradition in the near future. But I really would like you to understand the need and understand what we do. We get a call, or somebody comes into our office. The office is located on the 3rd floor of the Holmesdale Library. I conduct the testing under cases, and we test everybody who comes in to find out their beginning level. Once we determine that beginning level, I have over 30 active tutors on any given day. I pair them up with one of our tutors. I find a tutor who is competent in that particular level or discipline, and I find one that's geographically close to them. Because if the student can't show up for the session, it does them no good. If my tutor can not show up for the session, it does them no good either. So we want them to progress. We want them to progress quickly and make room for the next one. But as I said, we have been very successful. It's hard to quantify what we do. In fact, when I'm writing grants, it makes me pull my hair out, except for the beard. They've got me playing Santa again this year. That's why it's growing out. But you can quantify the GED results. So that's the one I usually talk about. And the fact that we've been 100% successful over the past 2 years says something about our program. So, board, if you have any questions, please.
How many people have gone through the program?
4,000, a little over 4,000.
And how do they, apart from the correctional institute, which I assume they geared them for you, but how do they find you? Because I didn't know you existed until our last board meeting.
One of our problems, and one of the reasons they hired me back in March, there has never been any marketing done with this program over the past 30 years because nobody really had the skill set to do it. If you listen to any of the Bold Gold media stations, you have been hearing spots about us now. I've been showing up to every networking event I can get to. Many of the faces in here I've seen from various different locations. Newspapers, they are in the process of writing a very nice story. I hope I haven't read it yet. From Connections Magazine. That's in the process of being done, so we're going to be in that, I believe, next month, one of our stories. And we have thousands of stories. One of my gentlemen just passed the GED and was accepted at Johnson College for their diesel mechanics program about a month ago, which means he is going to be getting a better than average wage in this area and be able to take care of his family even better. And we've got thousands and thousands of stories like that. I have one challenged individual that comes in 3 times a week into my office. The tutor meets him there. And again, great school district, get great students, but for all of the students, and I've got 2 of my own in Bristol, if all the students have worked as hard as Brian, it'd be outstanding. You wouldn't have a care in the world, and neither would our community. But illiteracy is actually passed on generationally. If your parents don't read and they don't push you to read, you don't read. And illiteracy either compounds or causes many of our societal ills. So that's why I thank the board for allowing me to come tonight, and anybody else have any more questions? Yeah. Sir?
I have a question. What's an average duration of how long one of your students takes?
Average duration is about 3 months. Some of our challenged individuals have been in there well over a year. They do progress in level, but they'll never be able to take it or something like that. But they come, they enjoy. Brian himself has risen 6 levels in the past year, and that's reading level. And he looks forward to coming in there every day. And everybody has their own story. Everybody comes in for their own reasons. There's a lot of embarrassment that goes with illiteracy. I know one gentleman that every morning buys his cup of coffee and a newspaper. Can't read the paper. But his fellow workers see him with paper, they never ask him. It's one of the coping mechanisms. I really love the idea of working for this program because I've had a very varied background. I've got a very eclectic skill set, but I've always run into people, either professionally or outside, that need help with their literacy. My ex-brother-in-law was a functional illiterate. And I can't tell you how many nights sitting at his kitchen table, having a cup of coffee, reading to him and explaining his insurance paperwork or his mortgage or so many other things. We have people in this county and in Wayne, this general area, who can't read their prescription bottles. How dangerous is that for them and for their family? They just can't do it.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
You call it adult literacy program. Are there ages that you?
Yes, the youngest we can go with the proper documentation and authorization is 17. But 18 and above, they just come into us. And I have one gentleman in the program right now who's 72, who is brilliant, speaks 5 languages, but he just can't wrap his head around English. So he's in our English as a second language course, and he's doing quite well. But English, I don't know if you know, is one of the 3 hardest languages to actually learn. So they come from all over, all walks of life, and they come to us. We are the only surviving adult literacy program in Northeast Pennsylvania. And if somebody came in tomorrow and tried to take over for us, just to get the framework of locations and everything that we have, it would probably take them conservatively about 10 years to do it. So again, we receive no funding whatsoever except donations and grants. So if you know any foundations who have a little extra money, let me know. I'm really good at writing grants. And if you know anybody who would like to be a tutor, we always need new tutors. As I said, many of my tutors are retired educators, and I'm about to lose 3 of them next month to Florida for the winter. I'll be back this month.
So Gary, I agree that we are doing a phenomenal job of educating our students. But we have parents of students at Delaware Valley who cannot read English. And as a result, they cannot help their children with their homework. So getting that information out as a resource to them, they're not familiar, the ones that I know are not familiar with your services. And I just, in summing it up, wanted to say, I realized that the state federal funds were dwindling, but I didn't know you were down to 0.
Yeah, they pulled their funding from us when they reevaluated their reporting procedures. Northampton Community College, let's go back to GED for a second. Northampton Community College runs a GED program. But because they're state and federally funded, their students have to go to a classroom 5 hours a week for them to be funded. My students can't do that. We have the single parents. We have the people who are already working, but they want to do better. They can't come during the day to a classroom situation for 5 hours. It's impossible. So a lot of our tutoring takes place evenings and on the weekends. And some of my tutors, my president, Annette Petrie, who lives right here at Matamoros, she's banging on 4,000 hours of tutoring. And she takes them 5 or 6 at a time. And she's 82 years old. But if you've never tutored somebody, I mean, the educators are well aware of this. But if you've never taught somebody, if you've never educated them, and they get that smile when they get it, you get addicted to that. And I tell my potential tutors that when you start seeing that smile, you're going to be tutoring for a very long time.
I got a few questions for you.
Yes, sir.
I got a few questions, so we can just go through them really quick. And yes, Dawn's question, you said you've done 4,000, you tutored 4,000, in what time frame?
30 years.
30 years, okay. You said you did a literacy program with Delaware Valley, but then you said that ages are from 17 up, so what was the literacy?
We did a readathon.
A readathon.
Yeah, with Dingman's Elementary School. That was, I believe, 2 summers ago. And I would love to be able to do that again.
That was done in Dingman's?
Yes.
In the school, in our school, okay. The one thing that I'm really always concerned about, like tonight, we have a few dollars left over.
Oh.
We did pretty well. Our administration and our business manager did very well. They're great workers with this, and, we're financially okay. So I always ask for money for our Pike County Library, because I'm a product of the library. I mean, they take my 2 kids are in the library every week. Where do you do your tutoring? You said Holmesdale.
My office is the 3rd floor of the library in Holmesdale, but we tutor in 20 permanent, well, what we consider permanent locations, and another 20 that vary within the 2 counties. We tutor in every library. We tutor in most of the churches, many of the fire halls, wherever there's a public venue.
So you use the Pike County Library?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In fact, we work very closely with the Pike County Library.
Well, I did not know about you whatsoever, and I know a lot about libraries, so I have to really we have to thank Board President Pam for bringing this to our attention, because I did not know about you. But what Pam said earlier really is what we have here, is we have a lot of parents that do not read, and they pass that habit on to their children, so the children do not read. And obviously, my education is through libraries and languages. And so if I was to, I want to give our library some money. How could that help your program?
Well, the library refers a lot of people to us. We work with the library on a brand new program called Mapping Your Future that we just developed. In fact, we just started a new English as a second language in the Pike County Correctional Facility Monday at the workshop. So there's a new program going in there, which of course we'll be calling on you to help with that. If you give it to the library directly, there wouldn't be any benefit. The benefit is we are getting students, and hopefully we're getting some tutors from the people that go in and see our literature and things like that. But we already use the library as tutoring for quite a few of my tutors in there.
Because the situation we have, that Pam really touched on this, is that we have so many parents
Yes, sir.
that are not there literacy-wise, and then they can't help their children. And then the children struggle, and parents are always looking for tutors and stuff like that. And you hear it back and forth. I don't care whether the child brings the parent into the library, or if the parent brings the child into the library. It's just always good when the both of them are in the library.
We have a gentleman new to our program. We do everything confidentially because of the embarrassment that that's all I'm using his first name like I did Brian's. But Bob came to us about 8 weeks ago. Has his high school diploma, graduated out of Trenton. And he said, I gotta tell you, I was a problem child. They pushed me through school. I can't read. Now I have a daughter that I want to help her with her homework and I can't. So he's been with us now and he's doing quite well.
I teach welding in the union hall, and I've had students come in, one in particular came in quite a few years ago, graduated high school, and he was dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I guess he just was passed on down the line, but he couldn't read. He couldn't read.
That's what happens a lot. It slips through the cracks. Educators, I've worked with them forever. Wonderful people. They are taught how to teach in college. Normally, they get into a situation in a classroom where there's 35 kids, and they can't use all the techniques they were taught. The reason we're so successful is because it's one-on-one and we can. We find out if it's a tactile learner, if it's a visual learner, if it's an audio learner. We had one gentleman who just could not focus, so what we used was a red-tinted transparency. You put that over the print. Now, all of a sudden, he could read it and do what he had to do. But normal educators in a normal situation just are precluded from doing that. You know, money and time, too many kids.
Okay, one last quick question.
Certainly.
We have a lot of children in this district with special needs, and they grow up to be adults with special needs. Do you help, do you work with these children?
Yes, sir.
As well as when they become adults?
Yeah, I have several challenged individuals with me right now. I'll be testing one, I want to say Thursday of next week, it might be Wednesday. And not only that, I just got a call from a person who was bedridden, due to being obese and has a lot of health issues, and I can't send a tutor to her home as she wanted because of the insurance and everything's got to be a public venue. So I just set up Skype with her and a tutor. So my tutor is Skyping her and doing it that way. So we find ways to make it work.
Sorry for all the questions, but I really
No,
thank you for
please.
your work. You know, I really thank you for your work, so glad to
Well, thank you, sir.
Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank everybody else. No more questions? All right.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna jump back to 3A, student recognition. We have 3 or 4 Eagle Scouts to be honored this spring, so it's a busy fall. It's a busy fall for Eagle Scouts. I think I only see one, right? You wanna stand up? Would you introduce yourself to the whole group and then tell us about your project?
I'm Robert Riccio. I'm part of Troop 76 in Shahola, PA. My Eagle Scout project was the outdoor station with a cross project at St. Vincent de Paul, up in Dingman's. I'm a DD kid. I went to Dingman, Delaware. I see some of my old principals here. And what it is was it's a Catholic story. It's the steps leading up to Jesus Christ's crucifixion on the cross. What they had one inside, but didn't really have anything outside to prepare and reflect on nature. And I went to my priest, Father Paul, who is sadly ill right now. He has a tooth stroke. He's not with us, and he hasn't seen the project yet, which I really hope he gets down to see it. But which it is the steps leading up to his crucifixion. They're on crosses. Also, I have pictures in my binder. I brought the Eagle board to show them. I'll come to the front. What it really was is a place to prepare and reflect. It's 14 stations across. It's a cross with a station on it, a picture, a color picture of another group that shows you each step of him leading up to the crucifixion. Also, the way I did it was you could dedicate or make it a memorial. We said that in memory of or in dedication to, with the signs. I also had 7 benches alongside that where you can sit in prayer. I also did that with the benches, in memory of and dedicated to. We also made a path. We put mulch under the things, that way the color would reflect against it. And we also have solar powered light caps on the post, that way you can see it at night. This is really benefiting the community. They didn't have anything like this at any of the churches up in Damon's. Like I said, my priest came up to me and said, "Can I do this for my Eagle project?" And of course, I said, "Yes, of course I'll do that." And it was a year and a half process. It was a good experience without my parents. When they're in the back, without them, I wouldn't have been able to do it because they pushed me to do it. Also, if you guys have any questions while I'm talking, I know I talk a lot, just stop me whenever and ask any questions you have. What else? Also, the community, fantastic with volunteers and donating. I went around all around the community asking for food, money donations, and they all helped me. Even the parishioners, I made a speech in front of my church 3 times one weekend, and that's where I got all the funding for my project. They really came together and helped me out. I also have volunteers. The first Saturday, I had over 60 volunteers at my project helping me out when I only needed 20. So I got a lot of work on Saturday, and then on Sunday, it rained. So I had 30 people there in the rain, having fun and helping me out with that. Now, anybody on the council have any questions for me?
What was your budget? How big was the budget for this project?
It was originally 3,400, and then with how prices fluctuate at stores and everything, the total price I believe was 2,600 I needed. So, and after all that, after all the money I had left over, I gave it back to the church and the parishioners.
How long did it take you from the day you started construction till you were done?
3 days in total.
3 total days. Wow, that's fabulous. Holy cow.
I want to see it.
It's really impressive.
So most of the time that you spent, is it planning?
Yep, and paperwork. That was a hard part of it, paperwork.
When did you finish?
Well, I officially got my Eagle Scout August 1st of 2017, but the project finished June 4th, 2017.
Did you make
it? I'm sorry, Jack.
Did you make these benches too, or just assemble?
We assembled them. We got them from Lowe's. And Lowe's was a huge help. So with the post, they were going to cost at least $200 or more, and they donated all the posts. So they helped me out the whole time.
That's great. That's great.
Very impressed. You did very well. Impressed with you. Good work.
Are you in high school now?
Yes, I'm in 10th grade.
Awesome.
What is your next venture?
Well, right now I'm technically a leader helping out the boys in the troop still. I'm doing a venturing crew. It's the co-ed with girls and boys. After Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they come together and just camping and doing extra stuff because, when you age out of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts at 18, so after that, there's when the age out of venturing is 21, so you have 3 years to go camping, and there's also ranks in venturing. And I'm also part of venturing crew 139 out of the American Legion in Milford, so I do that. And we just recently went to Boston and went on to Salem and the actual city of Boston, and now I went on the Freedom Trail, which is really nice.
Did you say you're a sophomore?
Yeah.
Sophomore. Shane, what we gotta do when he's done with his junior year? You gotta send him to Boys State. All right, yeah. The Keystone Boys State program, right? Get you information about that. It's an awesome week at Shippensburg for free. And it's all about leadership and civics and government, and it's a great week. Shane did it this year. He was one of 5
A lot
kids.
less construction, but.
Shane was one of 5 boys that went this year. That was a great experience, right?
You should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah, and mom and dad too.
Yes.
It's awesome. It's great stuff.
Solidly.
Any other questions? Thanks for coming.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you.
very much.
All right, as a lead in to item C, which is the testing results that we always do every fall, we asked Mrs. Kathy Farley to come. She's the reading department chair, and we asked her to come and just do a short presentation on Jack's favorite thing, TDAs, text-dependent analysis, just to kind of clue us in on what that is, since that's one of the things that gives us the biggest fits on the ELA exam. So Kathy, it's all yours.
Thank you. Okay, so a text-to-pen analysis question is a relatively new type of question on the PSSA. In 2015, the PSSA was fully aligned to the 2013 PA Core standards. And now in grades 4 through 8, all of our students have to write a text-to-pen analysis question. In grades 3, they have short answer questions, and at the high school, we do constructor response questions. But we now know with the new test design for 2018, that it's going to count as 25% of the overall test score. So the students can earn a total of 16 points on the TDA out of a possible 63 points. So the Department of Ed describes it as drawing evidence from literary and informational text for the purpose of analysis, reflection, and research. So I kind of thought I'd walk you through what that means and what we require our kids to do and what their expectation is on the PSSAs. So what we ask the kids to do is we ask them to read text multiple times. They go into text multiple times. And they go in for different purposes. So the first time they go into the text, they're going to go in to just get a gist of the text. Like, what is it about? What's the author trying to tell us here? Then they have to go back in the text again, and this time they're looking for structure of the text. So just as if you would build a house, authors are trying to, they have a design the way they want to design their piece of writing. So are they going to have chronological order? What is the point of view going to be? Is it going to be first person or third person? How are they going to introduce the characters? Is it going to be through indirect or direct characterization? And then the third time they go through, this is where the critical thinking comes in. We ask them to make inferences, draw conclusions, make generalizations. And this is where the hard work comes in. And this is where they have to kind of find the evidence to write the to write the text-to-pen analysis. And then they put it all together into an essay. So here's an example of what a 5th grader might see on the PSSA. The passage, little by little, piece by piece, is about 3 brothers who learn a lifelong lesson. Write an essay analyzing a lesson that one of the brothers experienced. Use evidence from the passage to support your answer. So in order for them to answer that question, there's a lot of other things they need to know. Basically, we call it eligible content. You may just call it skills. But in order to answer that question, the students need to know first genre. They need to know it's a folktale. Then they also need to know that it's written in chronological order. They also have to figure out what the lifelong lesson is. The lesson is not going to be there directly, exactly the lesson is this. They're going to have to look for evidence to try to figure out what that lesson is. And then for the last part, they're going to have to look for one particular brother's experience, figure out how they learned that lesson, and then put that all together in one well-written essay. So that, as you can tell, there's a lot going on there. Once they write that particular answer, they have their essay written, this is how it's going to be scored. It's scored on a 4-point rubric, and I know the board members have a copy of this in their folders. And if you get a 4 on the constructive response or on the TDA, 4 times 4 gives you 16 points. If you get a 3, 3 times 4 gives you 12 points. You get a 2, 2 times 4 gives you 8 points. You get a 1, 1 times 4 gives you 4 points. And that goes into your total score for your PSSA score. When you look at this, a 4 and a 3 are pretty good TDAs. This is where things start to fall apart. And they score them holistically. And what they do at PSSA is actually scan the test. And people sit in a room and they just score essay after essay after essay. And they know what a 3 should look like, what a 4 should look like, what a 2 should look like, and what a 1 should look like. And they have one person read it. Okay, I'm going to give it a 4. Rosemary reads it, I'm going to give it a 4. The student gets a 4. If I read, I say it's a 3, and Rosemary reads it, says a 4, well, then the third person would read it, and they would come to some consensus, and that's the score the kids get. So all of these are hand scored when the kids take the PSSAs. What do we do to try to improve these scores? Because it's hard stuff. We've adjusted our assessment plan. We're using something called the Classroom Diagnostic Tool. The Classroom Diagnostic Tool does not have a TDA on it. But what that does is that gives us all those prerequisite skills that the kids need to write the TDA. This is where we kind of test in the beginning of the year, and we try to teach all those different skills, so by the end we see a lot of growth. Our common assessments do have TDAs on them, so the kids get to practice on doing TDAs. Curricular revision, we seem like we do this all the time. Every time we see a need or we see something not right,
So we kind of tweak it. And as we get better at this, we keep tweaking the curriculum more and more. Understand new test design. We know that the TDA is going to be weighted more heavily. It used to be 19%. Now it's going to be 25% of the test. We do this in department meetings, PLC focus. We're always talking about this. In July, when the test scores come out, one thing I do is I kind of break down the scores. I'm not looking for the overall building scores. I'm looking to see for instructional purposes, where are we weak? And this is kind of one of the areas we saw this year that we really need to work on. We have new textbooks in 7th and 8th grade. We have new resources. We're doing professional development, as I said, data analysis, instructional impact. We have done TDAs, we've done professional development during school, after school, during PLC meetings, during department meetings. We practice that scoring like I told you they do at the state. We've actually sat together as teachers in a big circle, and we try to say, I think it's a 3, I think it's a 2. We would justify why we think it was score that we give it the score that we did. Does anybody have any questions? It's a lot. It's really, really hard stuff.
Can we
Yeah.
go back to the example quick?
Sure.
Because the one word that sticks out of that whole passage is the word analyzing.
Mm-hmm.
So what grade level do we start that critical thinking terminology at?
Well, you will see the word analyze in every single TDA construct response. I know it starts in 4 and maybe in 3. And so one of the ways we address that is the kids absolutely know the definition of analyze. They say we break it down to parts and show them how those parts relate to one another. That's right in the beginning. And this is in every single TDA. Oops, I moved. And that word analyze is everywhere. Every single one. The format's exactly the same.
And that goes in line with like synthesis and other.
And even though we're
It's
not,
hard stuff.
1 second.
Go ahead.
Even though they're not tested in 3rd grade, we still start building those skills, and we do the practice with them, so that when they go into 4th grade, at least they've got a little bit of that foundation there.
And in 3rd grade, they do have to write 3 short answer questions. So you're kind of getting them in use of the same practice. And as you know, in high school, you write 8. And in the grades 4 through 8, there will be 2 of them on the PSSAs this year. One will be a field test, and one will be an actual test. Yes.
When I got my daughter's in 6th grade, now she just got into middle school. I got to 5th grade, scores back, I called John because I was getting calls from other parents as well. We're talking tonight about literacy, reading, and libraries. And what I get from this TDA stuff is that children might be reading, but what benefit is it to them if they're not understanding and comprehending and taking in what they're reading? The sheer volume means nothing. Now, I use my own daughter because I don't have to be anonymous. She's an honors ELA now in the 6th grade. She got 17 out of 18, 18 out of 18, 18 out of 19, all the way down. Came to TDA and it was bottom dropped right out. So she's passing all that other stuff, which is what I had been seeing in her. It didn't seem like she was quite understanding what she was reading. And when it comes to essays, and she runs into that problem in science class, in math class. This carries through to every other subject that she does. Whenever it comes to the essay part, she'll have a problem because she's not comprehending it. And I asked other parents who had children of all different grade levels and literacy, whatever the term is, how good they are in each different thing. Some children are just not good at English. I wasn't great at it. And it all seemed to be text-dependent analysis. That was the low point, regardless of where you were on the chart, So the question I really have to answer is, now it's going to be 25% where it was only 16 or 18, right? What are we going to do differently?
Well, part of the problem is there's only one question that counts. So if a student goes in there and doesn't know all the eligible content that leads up to that, and they misinterpret the question, that could hurt that score. It may not be that they don't know how to write it. It may be they didn't know what theme is or didn't identify the theme or something like that. So that could be an issue also. But today, like my particular class, we gave the students a story. So yesterday we gave them highlighters. And today we gave them highlighters. But yesterday they had to read the story the first time. And all they had to do was write in the margins, what was the story about? What's the gist of the story? So today we gave them highlighters. And they had to highlight all words that show the setting in pink. They had to show words that show characterization, the way the characters are introduced in yellow. And they had to show the words that show the theme in green. So now tomorrow we're going to go back in again. And I have another slide, and they're going to look for something else. So we have to have the kids keep going back over and over into the text and pulling the text apart. That's the key.
It's just.
It's not reading it one time and answering a question. It's pouring it and going back 3 different times for 3 different reasons.
I like that though, with the highlighters. I can see how that could work brilliantly.
Mhm.
It's
So
really
today
good.
in our class with, for example, characterization, the kids had to go back in with the highlighter and they had to find all the characters, dialogue and actions that kind of gave us an idea what that character was like with the indirect characterization. And so we practiced that over and over and over and over and over. And then when they get the test, we hope that they do what they did in class all the way through, and they hope that they understand the question, because you don't know what the question is going to be. It's not so much just writing an essay.
And that's difficult because kids are not necessarily, I don't want to say, they're not necessarily that resilient. They want to be done. And writing is a hard task. And, I've already read it. And I read it twice, and I think I know what I'm doing. But it's that pulling it apart and applying those skills in a much more succinct and direct way. It's difficult for them. It's not an easy thing. So having that practice and that continual repetition is what's very important. And we've looked at how we were delivering the instruction as well and started to back it down in the elementary level, saying instead of writing the whole essay, let's focus on reading it and writing a good, solid introduction. And instead of writing 4 essays a month, let's do 2 and do them very well. So we use 1 week for an instructional week and the second week for an assessment week. So not every single, so we're practicing it. So they're taking the essay, they're writing it, the teachers are assessing it, then the next week they're pulling it apart. And they're showing kids what was strong about it, what areas that they missed, so that when they do the next essay the following week, they have something to build upon. So we were assessing kids every single week. And we took a lot of instructional time to take the test. So we discussed the administrative team this summer about how we can better utilize that instructional time and pull it back and make it more useful and beneficial. It's more important for them to know what they're doing than to just be giving them a grade. So we modified what we're doing, and so far it seems to be working, but it's a work in progress, because as we see that the tests are changing, we've got to change how we instruct.
And I think that piece is important. The test has changed. And even though we've talked about critical thinking, and I know, John, we've worked on this for years, and we always try to get better at that. But now, with this new elevated test, we have to really push our kids in that direction. So they're being asked to do more difficult tasks. And we're getting there, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 1 year. The standards would change, the test has changed. So by us continually looking at what we're doing and then putting in, the board was great. We purchased those new resources. We're working our way around a new textbook series, which really helps us get to where we need to be. But it's not an overnight. It's going to take time. And it's hard. Like you said, that's not easy to be able to analyze and then articulate. And as Kathy said, all those underlying skills. So it's not just the responsibility of a 4th or 5th or 6th grade teacher. You go all the way down to kindergarten, and as you start building those skills, they have to stack on. So it's a process, and it'll take time, but little by little we're getting there. And just having the expertise of our teachers, of Kathy, the team, the administrative team looking at it and dissecting it, I think we're headed in the right direction. Won't happen overnight, but we know what the goal is.
For a question like this one, can be more than one answer, it can be more than one theme. If the kids, can they pull out the evidence, and can that evidence support what they believe the theme to be? That's the key.
Has there been any discussions between school districts about making a lobby for more of a detailed rubric? I mean, this will drive an assessment person insane.
Yeah.
Sitting around in a circle and saying, I think that it's this, and I think that it's this, and then you're going 1 through 4 on so many components to one passage.
I mean, if you look at the rubric, you could be
so
strong
bad.
in one area, and for the first bullets you do well on, the next 5 bullets you don't. So now a sample that could be a 4 is now a 3 because it's an overall holistic score. That's not easy.
Well, I made the comment last meeting, and I said, we kill ourselves over this for the test grades, but if there's a problem with the assessment instrument itself, you'll never know. You know what I mean?
And they
I don't
changed
think-
it the last 3 years.
And they
Yes.
keep changing it, so
Yeah.
there's not
Changing
enough
again.
time there's not enough time to measure validity and reliability on some of these measures, so we have no idea.
The one
My strategic plan chart's thrown out the window, because every year they change the test, so it's like comparing apples to
You
oranges.
can't, right?
And the one thing that's difficult for us, if your child comes home and they have a 4 or 3 or 2, we never get to see that test again. So we couldn't see them taking it because we can't look. We can't see it when the score comes back, so we don't know what they did. So what we've done this year is ask the teachers toward the end, save a sample of your students' writing. So then when the PSSA scores come in the summertime, we can kind of say, oh, wait, this student got a 16. Let's see what it looked like the last TDA they did before. And maybe we can make some guesses to the best of our ability, because we don't get to see what it looked like. We don't get to see that, so it's kind of in the dark a little bit. So you're taking your best guess.
And that's one of the weird things about this too, is that a good chunk of the test gets sent to a computer company to be graded, and we grade this aspect. When we all grew up, and all of us that are New Yorkers, and we took Regents exams, you took it in the morning, your teachers graded it in the afternoon, you knew what your score was because they graded it, so they could give you feedback before the last day of school. This stuff doesn't come until the middle of summer, and they don't let you see the actual documents. So it's just so bizarre in so many ways.
It's something so subjective. I mean, if you happen to be the last essay that they're grading, or the group is grading, I mean, you have a lower chance of getting a good grade.
Right?
And 3 years ago, writing was a separate score.
Right?
It did not come under ELA. It was a totally separate score, and it was based upon a narrative and informational. There was no. It was a prompt that you wrote to. There was not. You weren't analyzing literature or an informational text. You were writing from a basic prompt. So we've had to totally shift gears in terms of that instructional component of what formerly we were doing. We knew TDAs were in there. Then the last 2 years, TDAs and prompts were part of the PSSAs. Now, next year, it's only TDAs. So the assessment has changed every single year for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's not easy.
And of course-
Same thing is happening in math too. They're adding more of a writing component in math. So the percentage of writing on the test has gone up, I think, to 23% for next year. So the TDA is 25% of the PSSA, and now it's saying the math test as well. It's going to 23% is going to be explaining the work that you've done on the math test. So they change the test every year.
And this is all based on our core standards. So, the whole debate about core standards, but they're good, they're rigorous, they're hard, and they really push the test, and they pushed us in this direction, which in the final analysis, if we can get our kids to be successful, it's good. It's where we want our kids to be.
Exactly. I teach my students that nothing easy is worth doing. We're teaching our students critical thinking skills so they can think. Facts is something I can get on my phone in 10 seconds, right? Anything I want to know. But applying that knowledge to real world situations is what life is all about. So, even though this is a difficult process, we really are doing our students a great favor. It's tough for us and the people who have to sit down and score, but it's a move in the right direction.
I have a question about the PLCs. How often do they get together between schools?
Between schools?
Like, so 6th grade teachers from one school, how often from DV, how often do they get together with the 6th grade teachers at Dignam?
They do that at department chair,
At least once a month, at least once a month.
Okay. So if you have a school, and I understand that we're looking at aspects of the test where we need to improve, but when you do have a school, one particular school in a grade that went down by so many more points than the other equivalent grade, what are we doing to see what those, what the teachers at the other school are doing that may benefit some of those other students?
We have a couple things. We work in department meetings, but we also use a lot of Google Docs. So those 2 buildings you're talking about are doing Google Docs. They have now common rubric they talk about, and they can have conversations with each other all the way down. They can agree on different things, disagree. So they do speak to each other more than once a month, but we see each other face to face. And the principals have been great, allowing them release time if they need to go to another building, if there was a need to do that. But they are communicating between the 2 different buildings.
We don't necessarily do that on the elementary level, and I know that's what you're referring to.
Well, middle school as well.
Right. On the elementary level, we have not really had the opportunity, other than through specific trainings where we have substitutes come in. We just had one this week where we had all the grade level teachers together in second grade, for example. So it's very difficult with 3 or 4 different schools to get everybody together in the same room. The principals do coordinate and work with one another to make sure that we're all getting the same information from building to building. But in terms of getting all the teachers together, unless we have an official training, it's not easy to schedule PLCs to get 14 teachers together in the same room when we're covering various, geography of the district.
Is there a way of maybe, if we're meeting in PLCs in their respective buildings, is there a way to use technology to kind of do something through Skype or something like that to increase that, so that, because we have so many amazing teachers that I'm sure have great ideas. And if they're not given that opportunity to say, you know what, listen, my students were having that same problem, but, and you may not have sufficient time once a month to do that. But if we can get creative about some of those, when you do have, there's some drastic differences between some of our schools in test scores dropping. So we can blame the test all we want, but those are big jumps, or drops, I should say. That there has to be ways that we can think outside the box to help target those specific, whether it be those grades. And listen, sometimes you just have a class that struggles. Do you know what I mean? Whether it be a grade that struggles, do you know what I mean? A particular school and everything, and that's okay. But just making sure that we're not just relying, on what we've already done, but really looking at thinking outside the box to really make sure that, those third graders that were fourth graders, don't struggle again this year. That we really make sure that we're remedying, do you know what I mean, as much as we can.
I would be more concerned if it was the cohort dropping versus a grade level to grade level. I would be more concerned if it was my third graders going into fourth grade and I saw a significant decline versus third grade to third grade.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm talking about, making sure that those third graders, who are going in, who did have low test scores compared to the other schools in our district, aren't going to have low test scores again in fourth grade. Do you know what I mean? So that we can, if there is something that we can do to help them, and,
Well, in
or those
addition,
sixth graders who are going into seventh grade, do you know what I mean, to make sure that we're
And
looking at
Kathy,
that.
if you show that other slide, that's the stuff they're doing. That's all the things we do. And now, some of those are comments about TDA, but those larger bullets, not the sub bullets, those larger bullets, we do literally in every subject area. We used to, in the old days, we used to revise curriculum like every 5 years. We would have about a 5-year cycle. Now we're doing almost every curriculum gets revised every stinking year, because there's just so many changes that they're throwing at us. They don't let anything simmer. They're changing every single year. So we're doing this in almost every department every year. It's amazing when I look back 25 years ago, from when I was a 5th grade teacher, to the breakneck pace that we have to go at to try to keep up with the state. It's really wild. That's why I always say every year, they always call me from the Scranton paper and they ask me for a quote, because, we beat the state average on everything and we're one of the 4 districts honored, or yada, yada, yada. And I always say, listen, we want to be successful on the test, on the state test, but we don't want to become obsessed with them, because they're not the most important thing. We do great and we look great in the paper, but it's not our number one focus, because there's so many other things we're trying to cover with the kids that will make them well-rounded, So this is a piece of the puzzle.
And Jessica,
We work hard on it, but it's a piece.
and even our Secretary of Ed and our governor is
Have now
really
said
beginning
that.
to speak that language, that, it's
Yeah.
kind of the pendulum
Swing
swinging
it
back.
Yeah.
That it's not, the whole child, as we talk about.
Yeah.
And it's not just testing, there's so many other things to be concerned with.
Yeah.
The one thing you do have to remember, though, the assessment is designed to measure across the board.
Yes.
It's not measured, the school does something their way, or measures a different way. So I would be interested in knowing what those dips are. I mean, if I were in charge of the curriculum or overseeing people who are instructing children, I would want to know, why is there? I'm really not sure what dips Jessica is referring to.
Well, Kathy, we'll
at some
switch
point-
gears and you guys can go up now.
Can I say one last thing?
Okay.
We did meet with, for example, I staffed the 6th grade about 2 weeks ago. We had all 6th grade teachers with myself in the middle school library all day long. And that's all we talked about. We talked about equity and what's working here, what's not working here. We did the same thing with both 7th and 8th. So we do understand that, and we did address that, so we're kind of, now we're working through Google Docs to keep that going, because we can't pull us out of the classroom all the time.
Right, of course
So,
not. And
but we
that's
did
why
that with both, if that's a dream.
think outside the box for, you know, if you can get the ball rolling and now that you have,
Right.
you can just continuing that so that.
Thank you.
I have just a few more, because this is important. Like what Jim was just saying now. The same girl, when she was in second grade, she came home with a math program, and I had never seen Common Core. It was a long time since I've been in school. And it said, do the problem, which she was able to do mathematically, express your answer in words. So she couldn't do it. And for 20 minutes, I couldn't do it because a second grade child doesn't know what integer, or at least when I was in second grade, I didn't know the word integers. So I couldn't help her express it with the vocabulary of a second grader, you know? Third grade, like my daughter today, my other daughter, she got a dictionary from the Matamoros Rotary Club, Matamoros Milford Rotary Club, so I really appreciate that because the kids love that when they get them dictionaries. But in second grade, they didn't have that. My real worry about this is I can understand what John is saying because I kind of feel this way too. I don't really care about the tests. The word that I couldn't think of before was proficiency. Are they proficient at what they're reading? I really want them to understand what they're reading. I like the idea of do two, and do two the right way instead of doing four rushed. And I really like the idea about you breaking it down because when I went to school, we had nuns. And
They broke you down.
they broke us down. I always say they were the sisters of charity and the sisters of mercy. They were neither merciful nor charitable. But they taught us who, what, when, where, and why. And that came to my head when you were talking about the highlighting, because that breaks down the thing. Now, I really like the way that's being done, but I have a daughter in third grade, and I have a daughter in sixth grade, and there's many children like this right now. So I like the way we're doing things. But my daughter in sixth grade was not taught to break this down in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. So we got to run into, or we're going to have to double our efforts for the children that are in sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. Because the hardest thing that I've ever had to teach somebody is to reteach them. You know?
Like I said, Common Core in 2013, so it's in 2013 on. So yes, we have to catch up with some of the kids that were there.
Because if they've been doing something all along, they've just, all they've done is developed a bad habit. You know, so now we're going to have to unteach them and then reteach them.
It's not a bad habit, it's just a different, we're just holding to a higher standard. And every time we found that, every time we hold our kids to a higher standard, they always rise to the occasion. So we'll get there.
Okay, I'm just concerned about the older children now. My third grader, she hasn't even taken a PSSA yet, right? They don't take it till the fourth grade.
Third grade takes it this year.
Third grade takes it.
And we call that filling in the gaps because that's what it is, that there are gaps and because of the core standards. So we have to backtrack. And that's why that classroom diagnostic tool is so important. Because the students take that and then the teacher gets an idea of, well, what are the skills that they're lacking in? Even the skills that they should have retained or learned the year before. And then they can kind of target that. So they have to teach what they need for this year, plus sometimes fill in those gaps.
You know, John mentioned it before, the critical thinking, and we teach these children, and I look at a lot of the stuff and I say, where did this come from? And then I think how it teaches the child critical thinking, mathematics, that estimate the answer. And I said, why? I don't want to estimate the answer, I want the answer. But I understand the critical thinking behind it once I've delved into it and think about it. But I just want these children to be able to understand that a lot better than me at my age did, you know? So I do worry about this, but I'm really glad when I did call John up, he had it identified, and I'm glad you have a plan in action, because that says a lot about this district. All districts will have problems. This district, I called up out of the blue, I asked John, and not only did you know what the problem was, but you had a plan to do it. So I'm asking a lot of questions because parents are going to be asking me a lot of questions because they're concerned about it.
You mentioned vocabulary, and one of the things we've been targeting too is using that same vocabulary. So what you learn in kindergarten, you know, maybe a big word like integer, let's teach the kids what it's called, you know, what the true word is, and carry that up so they don't have to relearn what the actual vocabulary is. So that's something we've concentrated on for the past couple of years. So just, you know, when you said that, I wanted to just share that with you.
And that dictionary the Rotary gave out today, it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's nice and thick and it's got lots of stuff in there, you know. And the kids always come home, so at least my daughter's so excited.
And the little girl said they smell nice.
I thank the Rotary for doing that, because these kids, at least my kids, really love this, and I love that they love a book. Because like I said, a lot of people here have educations. It took me forever to get through college, because I didn't have any money. But my education really came out of these places and books, and I learned things. We teach subjects, but books is what fills in the gaps of these subjects that we teach. So I really want the kids and myself to understand what we're reading. Because there's a world in these books, and there's a world in writing. So I really thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Can I have a copy of that PowerPoint? Can we see? Do we have a full copy of that
No, you
PowerPoint?
just have the one sheet. Yeah, we
Or we
can
can email it to all of you. Sure.
And if I send you emails, you can take a week to get back to me. They don't have to right away, because I will have questions.
I'll
That's why I
email you
wanna
back.
have a
Hold on, I
copy.
want to write that down. Thank you.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be right away.
Jack, I was with Rotarians giving out dictionaries in this school. One of the funnest things we get to do is Rotarians, because to see those little faces and the excitement in their eyes, excitement about a dictionary, it's a great thing. We've been doing it for a lot of years. One of our older members, Art Ridley, who has been with the Rotary since its inception, remembers doing that since the beginning of the process until it started. So it's been a lot of years that we've been doing it.
I'll pass it out.
That's everything, So it was great to see that inside. So I really thank you. Well, that means something to the town.
John here is the next president of the Milford Baptist.
Hey, all right.
Jack is determined.
Don't you have to
We're
miss out?
glad that you're
And
the
a new
next one.
grandma.
Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, the good doctors are gonna take us through the test results. Show us our test results, please. The diagnosis.
So we'll get started. This is the district overall average in each of the subjects that are tested by the PSSAs and the state average for the 2017 spring tests. Then I broke it down by building. So Delaware Valley Elementary Schools by subject, and they only take the science exam in 4th grade. So you can kind of see how Delaware Valley did. And then the preliminary SPP score is at the bottom. The official scores come out tomorrow, but I don't think we'll see that much of a change between today and tomorrow. But hopefully they'll be fairly consistent. But as you can see, on all counts, we're above the state average.
Why such a large drop between 4th and 5th grade math?
That's a good question. She asked, why is there such a big drop between 4th and 5th grade math? We have had consistent concerns in 5th grade with mathematics. There's a lot more open-ended problem solving. And we've tried various groupings in the way we instruct. We've done homogeneous grouping. We've tried heterogeneous grouping. So we're going to see how it goes this year. Schools have decided to go from all kind of heterogeneous grouping back to or vice versa, from homogeneous grouping back to heterogeneous grouping to see if kids can help pull kids along with the content. So we'll see how it goes this year. I'm a little concerned that we went in that direction, to be honest with you, because our overall scores are impacted by the number of students we elevate or maintain advanced and move higher into advanced. And our fourth grade scores consistently have a lot more kids that are advanced than our fifth grade scores. And when you don't maintain that, it impacts your overall SPP score. So if you don't maintain it or move more kids into the advanced level, you lose points on your SPP. And fifth grade, historically, from the inception of PSSAs, fifth grade has always been a tougher test.
And just as we're writing more and having our kids think more in ELA, it's the same thing in math, as Peg and Jim were starting to say, that the students have to really explain in writing on the test. So that's another area. And we noticed that as we pull the data apart, and I know Tom Smith did a great job helping us with this, but algebraic thinking, that was one of the areas where we were a little bit better at that in fourth grade. Fifth grade is harder. So, what we're doing now is really pulling apart and seeing where is it that we need to, spend more focus, or maybe look at how we're teaching or how we're reteaching.
The other thing I want to mention, you will see a bit of a difference between fourth grade across the district scores and the middle school science scores. There is a lot of science content in the fourth grade assessment for science. However, it is primarily a reading test. So although there's content in there and it's all science and informational text, it is not the traditional science that you're getting in the middle school. So you will see, I think that's an impact why you see higher scores overall in general in the fourth grade across the state in the fourth grade science scores versus eighth grade science scores. But I just want to point that out because there's a significant difference between fourth and eighth grade. And we do very well in our science scores, which is wonderful. Dingman-Delaware Elementary School, you'll see similar results in that building. The SPP score in the Dingman-Delaware Primary School is solely based on the third grade reading scores at the Dingman's Elementary School and their attendance and promotion rate. They don't have any PVOS scores. They don't have any of those other components that come into their PVOS scores. So they will have a higher score because it's not based upon the whole building. It's only based upon third grade scores.
Before you advance, look at the state averages from year to year, how they're all over the place. This goes back to Corey's point about validity and reliability, that we have no confidence that from year to year that the test is of comparable difficulty. They're not. They're all over the place. So therefore, your state scores and your school scores are all over the place too. If your state average was pretty similar across the board from year to year, then you know that the level of difficulty of the test is pretty consistent. But it shows you how inconsistent it is.
Yeah,
so it's just another crazy factor.
They do change the test every year, and what happens, they change the eligible content that's tested every year. They'll change the numbers of questions. In the old test, in the old PSSA, you would get information from the state, and you'd be able to really focus on the eligible content in a specific area and target that. But the problem, what we've had every year, is they change the numbers of questions. So you may target Anchor 1.1 this year that had 10 questions, and you say, okay, we're a little deficient there, let's target that. And then in year 2 of the test, they have 3 questions there, and the state will target a different area. So you can never be confident that the test is the same from year to year. That was not the way the old PSSA was constructed.
They used to give us a map of what weight each content standard was given. Last year, there was no weighting. They didn't give us anything, which eligible content would be more important than others. So we're shooting at the dark. We're covering everything, and we know historically what's been more of a focus than others, but we don't know for sure.
And covering everything isn't easy because if you look at the standards, there are many, many standards.
Mm-hmm.
So while we do cover everything, having that idea of what they were going to more heavily test was critically important, and that's not.
But isn't covering everything with the intent and not teaching to the test?
That's correct.
Yes.
However, they're not testing everything. They're changing the rules in the middle of the game. So you're trying to cover everything and give kids a well-rounded education, and then they specifically target certain things and weight certain things. So if they covered everything and they tested everything and they didn't weight everything, it would be a fairer fairer game.
And the PSSAs, we take them sometimes in March. Well, we still have April, May, and June. So while our standards should be spread out over that amount of time, and they are, if we don't know, some of the standards, we may be looking at teaching later in the year because you just can't fit everything in before we try to, but it's tough to do that. So it's, and yeah, they're all important, and we have to address them all. But
And this sounds like excuses. I think we did great.
it's the way it is.
I want to turn this around because when I look at these scores, I was pleasantly surprised, especially once we got the state averages. When I first looked at these columns and I looked at the data and I sent it out to the elementary principals, I was shocked because this is not historically this type of scores. I mean, we're usually seeing in the 80s and 90s on everything. But once we got the state averages, I was like, hey, we're going to be just fine. And I told the principals when we sent out the scores, I said, don't be discouraged because we don't know. We're going to be up there with the Abingtons. We're going to be up there with the Wymissings. We're going to be up there with the Council Rocks when we get these scores in these high-performing school districts. So don't get discouraged because you see a 51%. Because if we're getting a 51%, they're getting a 51%, and those schools that are not high performing are not going to be getting a 51%. So,
Can we get a breakdown down to this level for our peer group? I saw that mentioned. We do.
yes, and I believe it's in your packet.
And yeah, in
I
your
saw it was
packet,
an overview.
I just got this this week. And there's a packet in your folder, and they put us in a peer group based on similar enrollment and similar percentages of free and reduced lunch. Quite a few schools are from the southeast area, Centennial, Upper Marion, and then from out in central PA, Manheim, Mechanicsburg.
And so with this peer group, do we get a grade breakdown, kind of like we did against the state average, or no?
Yeah, they dig deeper.
They
Oh.
dig and they kind of look at it'll tell in that sheet. It should show you some analysis.
What I gave you is I gave you the summary. I gave you our group. I gave you the summary for all subjects of PSSA.
Okay.
You'll see the state average is the lowest, then our peer group is next, and then we're above the peer group.
Right.
And then I gave you an example of 11th grade for all three, basically it's all three keystones put together, the literature, the algebra, and the bio. And the same thing, the state average is the lowest, then our peer group is next, and then we're, for the most part, we're above. I think this year we're just about tied, but almost every year we're above, I think every year but 15. So, but I just thought that because that was even though the test has changed, it's nice to be able to have, you don't normally get data on other groups for another year until when the report comes out in September. But this IDEX company gets their hands on the state data and then they crunch it for us. And this is a free thing that we get through your School Boards Association. So I quickly ran this off this afternoon just so you'd have a little something until we get more info.
Like, well, let me preface it this way. I'm not worried about these. Because I know who we have in this school, and this school is second to no one in this area, So whatever we're seeing, I have complete confidence in the teachers' administration here to carry on and go forward and learn better ways as we go, because we're learning the tests.
Mhm.
But I need to be educated. So I'm not questioning your
No.
abilities
Yep.
or your level, just I need to be educated myself. In science, now I've been looking at this Google Classroom,
Mhm.
and getting good essays, and there's multiple choice, fill in the blanks, and then it comes down to essays.
Mhm.
How, I learned tonight how the TDA's graded. How are we grading essays in, say, a normal science class, in a regular everyday science class? And I know we spoke of math, and we spoke of ELA, but are we seeing the same thing with the essays in science as well?
Well, they do science journals with the FOSS kits. They don't necessarily do specifically, and I'll defer to Diana here, but they don't do specifically essays that are science-based. There are not essays on the 4th grade science, but they will do content with their weekly ELA test. They'll do content-based TDAs that may be science-based or maybe social studies-based or just informational. They may read a magazine article that they're getting out of Time for Kids, and read that and then write a TDA based upon a prompt that the teacher gives them from that current event. So they're doing things like that. But in the science class specifically, PSSAs doesn't have, they might have it open-ended, but they're not doing a TDA on that exam in science. That's only on the ELA test. And in most of our buildings, the ELA teacher is social studies, not the science and math people are linked together. So they work together in terms of grading, and they do use the PSSA rubric whenever they are grading the content. So they're taking that 4-point rubric that Kathy shared with you, and they are using that and working through that with the kids. So when they're doing their weekly assessments, they are using that same rubric to grade it. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, it's completely. I'm actually getting good at this stuff because I'm understanding. I'm a long way in 4 or 5 years. The other question that I should have asked before, I understand 180 days in the school year, we get the PSSAs 3/4 way through, and we're trying to implement the new type of breaking down, and I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing tonight. Are we checking the kids though before they get to the PSSAs? So yeah.
Like Gina talked about doing, and Kathy talked about doing the assessment in the beginning of the school year, and then we do it again mid-year. And that's an assessment provided by the state that they do. The teachers get the data from that, analyze it, and then use that to formulate instruction individually for each child. So they'll get an individual score for each kid and then modify the instruction based upon those assessments.
Thank you very much. Excuse all the questions.
No, no.
These are the questions that go on in my head at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Sure. And these are Shahola Elementary. I'm sorry, Jack.
So the state is giving us this peer group that really emphasizes free and reduced lunch because of the socioeconomic impact. And I would imagine Mr. Linton would say that's a very important part of your process also. Shouldn't we be putting on our spreadsheets also what the state FRL is and what our FRL is?
Well, the interesting thing is, this year, the state did not break it out. They have we used to get scores for special education students, various students with racial breakdown, and then we would also get a breakdown for Title I students, and free and reduced lunch, socioeconomically deprived. This year, they lumped everybody in one category and called it historically underperforming. So we can extrapolate the data, but it's not given to us in that manner. And I guess we could go out to the state spreadsheets and try to figure out, now that we have a comparable group that we have, and this isn't the state that gave us that, this is a private company that the state has hired that gave us that analysis of similar schools, but it's not direct. It used to be a direct. You could just go out, pull it down, and look at comparatively, but now it's one lump sum. Remember, we used to have a subgroup of 40, so if you had 40 students that were a subgroup that were Hispanic students, or you had 40 students in a school in a grade level that have free and reduced lunch, that was a subgroup. Again, no longer exists. It's one whole group with everything that they're considering historically underperforming, and it's just thrown all in together.
Even in our district, there are 3 separate socioeconomic groups in each of our educational facilities.
And they differ by school.
And they differ by school.
Correct.
So I think that'd be a really helpful thing to see.
And I have some, I just pulled out an article that was in the Scranton Times earlier this month, just to give you an idea. Remember the 4 schools that we were honored as one of 4 schools in Northeast PA. Abington, 19% free and reduced lunch. Crestwood, 18.1. Dallas, 17.7. And Delaware Valley, 32.8. So they're we're twice as poor based on free and reduced lunch, but we were the 4 schools that were the highest performers. And then you look at some of our neighbors, though, conversely, Wallenpaupack, 53.4% free and reduced. Wayne Highlands, 46.3%. Western Wayne, 53%. So our neighbors on the 84 corridor are considerably more poorer than us. I'll scan this and get that to you too. That's a nice one.
But 2 or 3 years ago, we would get the data from the state, and on the state spreadsheet, they would code every group. So we would be able to extrapolate it every way we.
By grade level,
Yeah.
by subgroup, by.
And that was under No Child Left Behind, and now a lot of that is gone by the wayside.
Right. So I'm finished with elementary. I'll let Jim turn it over.
Here we have Delaware Valley Middle School. You can see again, they only give science in 8th grade. It's 4 and 8 that they give the science assessment. We have.
Can you speak up, Jim? I'm sorry.
I said, you can see that we only have the science assessment in 8th grade. It's given in 4th and 8th grade. And we go down, looking at the scores. They're either above the state average or very close to the state average. The asterisk is on the Keystone algebra for the state and for the middle school. That's because that information is based on first-time testers. The way you get the number in the high school, kids have the ability to retake the Keystone if they don't pass. So many kids pass it when they retake it, but this is the score for students who take the Keystone for the first time. And all the people in Delaware Valley Middle School and Dayton Delaware Middle School are first-time testers. Dayton Delaware Middle School, see the scores. We're looking at the ELA score in 7th grade. It's a few tenths of a point under the state average. As Mrs. Farley has indicated, we have gotten these 7th grade teachers together, and we have looked over the test scores and identified all the areas that we need to do additional remediation. And the great thing about the CDT that we give to all our students, 6 through 8, is that it gives an individual map on every student on all their strengths and weaknesses. So that's the way we target instruction moving forward. So, and we give that CDT at the beginning of the year, and we give it again about 8 weeks out from the PSSA. So we not only see the growth from the beginning up through the mid-year, but then the mid-year one is used very strongly to target the remediation that we need to do through the time leading up to the PSSA.
We also did a major curriculum overhaul, and we also purchased new, if you remember, 7th and 8th grade, we purchased a new textbook series, and not that that's our curriculum, but that's a definite major resource, which now they're aligned with core standards where our previous ones were not.
Yeah,
So-
new textbook series in ELA for
And
7th and 8th grade, and a new textbook series 6 through 8 for that.
Actually, K through 8.
8th grade, yeah. I'm speaking for 6th
Yes,
grade.
I'll just throw that in.
Okay, if we look at the high school,
Could you go back to the
Yes.
last slide? Is that DVMS or is that DDMS?
that's
That's
DDMS.
DDMS.
That's a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, but on the graph it says DVMS.
Yeah, it's
Oh, that's a mistake. We'll fix
Oh,
that.
I see, in the red.
In the red.
in the red.
You didn't catch
Before we
that.
put that up to the
Yeah.
press.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, looking at the high school where they give the Keystone exams, you can see our literature exam, the Algebra 1. Again, this is the snapshot of 11th grade. We take our literature test in 10th grade. Any student who doesn't pass in 10th has the opportunity to retake in 11th, both in the winter and the spring. Algebra 1. If you don't pass in the 8th grade, you can retake it in 9th and 10th. And then some students are taking algebra for the first time in 9th grade. And then they can have the opportunity to retake it up through the spring of their junior year. Okay, now the next slide is our Delaware Valley High School AP exams. This is the percentage of students passing with a 3 or better, showing DV in comparison to the national average for the AP exam. That's the, you do have a lot of APs occurring at the high school.
We're gonna get this PowerPoint.
Yeah.
When we get this, is it possible to put a number of students for each of those subject areas?
Yeah, because like when you get to the French and German, they're low numbers.
Yes.
You know, you look at those and it might have been 4 out of 4 this year, and last year was 3 out of 4.
We can get that.
Yeah, we can do that. We have that in another spreadsheet.
Okay, this is the AP data. In the first, at the top slide here is the passing percentages over the last 2 years. You can see they jumped from 62 to 64. Our AP scholars jumped, and this was we were very happy with this 125 number because the number of students in the high school has dropped. So our percentage of AP scholars jumped up even though our population in the high school is dropping.
Our all-time record is 136. And that was the Shane's Brothers class. But there was 100 more kids in the building at that time. They graduated almost 475 in that class. And most of our groups in high school are around 375 now. So we're thrilled that AP scholar number got so close to that 136 number.
Jump back up. Could you go back? Okay, the next section here is the number of seniors enrolled in AP classes, and you can see it jumped a little. Again, with the number of seniors dropping, the number of seniors taking AP has gone up and to 45.8%. And the bottom is the National Merit finalists, commended and finalists.
The National Merit Finals is based on high tests on the PSAT.
PSAT, yeah.
So we had 2 commended last year. This year we have 2 commended and 5 in the national finals. So that's pretty cool.
Is there a benefit to taking AP courses when the passing rate is 64%?
Yeah.
Yes,
if you're
yes. We actually, Dr. Blom and I have gone, we're at the AP conference in Washington, D.C., and there was a presentation on students who take APs, and students who take AP have more likelihood of completing college in 4 years. Even students who get a 1 have a higher percentage of completing college in 4 years than students who don't take any.
The reason is they don't get blasted when they go to college their freshman year because they've had the experience of taking tougher than high school courses.
Yeah.
The kids that don't take the APs usually struggle freshman year.
And it's a rigorous exam.
It's worth the risk.
Well, what happens to the 36% that fail?
Well, they might still pass the class, but just fail the national exam that they sit for.
Yeah.
And colleges will give out college credit if
Correct.
maybe skip a whole year.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago,
A couple years ago.
kids were starting.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the great things to see was to see some of our graduates come in for interviews for teaching positions here, and you see on their transcript, 9 or 12 credits of AP that they took at Delaware Valley High School. So it saves them a semester.
Yeah.
Sometimes more.
My daughter graduated a year early between her concurrent enrollment and her AP classes, which enabled her to get into PT school a year earlier. So it is a wonderful opportunity and save the year tuition, which is even the bigger bonus.
So that, my senior year in high school, I took all college courses. It was through St. John's University. I got credit for all of those, and I was able to go to summer school and get credit for even more of them. So that happens now with our children too, that I think.
Yeah, we also have dual enrollment courses going on with Keystone Junior College, with Lackawanna College, and with Luzerne County Community College. So kids can be dually enrolled and picking up college credits, and that's not associated with AP. That's something separate that occurs within the high school.
So say a child goes to Penn State, are these accredited at Penn State, or they?
Yes, the credits will transfer.
We had a kid a couple years ago. We invite the college freshmen to come back at Christmas time to talk to the seniors about this is what you should know where you're seated right now, because we didn't learn this till this is where we did well, this is where we got blasted as freshmen. And the one kid, and I forget his name, but he went to MIT, and he said, I took 13 AP classes at Delaware Valley, and I had 39 college credits. MIT did not accept any because they don't accept any AP credits. But they said you would have never gotten in if you hadn't taken all those rigorous courses. That's what sold us on this kid's worth the risk of letting him in.
I know I took them because it was a challenge and I love the challenge. But then when I actually applied to college and started paying for college, I realized how important those credits were because I had a ton of them. And money was money.
So you can earn college credit by taking AP, and you can earn college credit by doing dual enrollment. And we have those two options for our kids in the high school.
Jim, if 3 is passing?
3 is passing. Okay, this is the Delaware Valley's dropout rate. You can see it's been trending downward over the 3 years. And this just came out yesterday, that rate. This is the cohort graduation rate. If you remember a year ago, Jen Constantino from Guidance came in and explained it. This is based on the 2015-16 cohort. We haven't gotten the formula rate from the state for the cohort graduation rate yet. We've gotten the number. It was hot off the press yesterday, but we did not get the actual formula that the state uses to come up with the number. So I used the cohort graduation rate number 16 to show how you get to this number.
And every state could use their own formula up until about 6 years ago. And now every state has to use the same formula so that you're comparing apples to apples when the feds show this is the graduation rate over 4 years. So this is strict. This is exactly 4 years from the time you enter freshman year. So if you had to stay for summer school your senior year, then that would count against us. You would not be part of the 4-year cohort, but you would be part of the 5-year cohort. So there's 2 different graduation rates that they release.
Yeah, actually, during the year, towards the end of this year, we have to do another uploads to the Pennsylvania Information Management System, and that determines our 5-year cohort graduation rate, and has a lot to do with our dropout rate as well.
Special needs children who go to 21, then do they actually wind up breaking down?
Yeah. They don't count in your 4-year or 5-year graduation rate, but they don't count against you for dropout, right? Because they're still enrolled, even though they didn't graduate in time as they go, but they didn't drop out, so they don't help you here, but they don't hurt you. They don't hurt you on the dropout rate, thankfully.
You said the summer school students, I guess.
Right. The cohort you start as a freshman and you end after 4 years. You know.
So if you go to summer school your senior year, and when I was at Fort, we would have 10 to 15 or 20 kids graduate in August, but that's too late. They didn't graduate by June. So
it's interesting because you're starting with fall, it'd still be within that 4 years.
Well, they're saying that the 4 years is over whenever you graduate in June. So they hold it against you. That used to really affect our numbers over there.
Yeah, because the state looks at that the students in high school have credit recovery options, freshman, sophomore, and junior year. So they should take advantage of it, but not all kids do. They get to their senior year and say, "Oh, I need that."
Or that one credit, and the rubber hits the road. That's where it meets the road, and then they finally step up to the plate and go to summer school.
And this is the cohort graduation rate. Again, I told you that we base the formula off of last year's rate, but we just got the rate yesterday, and there's a little bit of an increase over 2015-16.
And every kid in the country has a unique ID number that every kid is tracked from the time they start freshman year. So they can be in our freshman class for a week, and if they disappear and they don't enroll, and that new school doesn't get them enrolled and use that unique identifier, even though they might graduate from somewhere else, if they didn't do their due diligence in the other school, do the proper paperwork, it counts as a dropout for us. Yeah. They have to be, that kid and that number has to be found somewhere else and become the ownership, data responsibility of that new school. Otherwise, we get penalized.
Yeah, I was in guidance just yesterday talking about that, and they were talking about the numbers of kids and how they were tracking them down in other schools. Anytime a kid leaves, they try to make sure they track the student down, and they're assured that they're enrolled in another building, because we can't when we upload the information to the state, you have to have proof that they are enrolled in another school.
And we pray that kids don't go to New York City because their accounting for kids is not good. And so it's almost like, oh my God, we know he's in the city, we know he's there somewhere because his grandmother told us, but if they don't put it in the computer system, then it counts against us.
We have kids who come in from the city and they might start ninth grade and you get the record on them at the end of ninth grade.
Yeah.
Does DV cyber students,
Count.
so they count in
Yeah,
here,
they
so
count.
because they're still considered enrolled
There are
students?
There are students.
But if they go to a cyber charter, they're not ours anymore. But if
Right,
they-
so then that number
That's right.
should go away.
Okay, this is our annual SAT comparison. You can see over the last 3 years. And the 2016-17, we've had a jump in the average score. It's a good jump.
They've recalibrated the SAT, so you'll see all three scores went up. The DV average, the Pennsylvania average, and the national average all jumped this year because there's a new SAT that started back in March of 17. So all the scores are higher than they used to be. But we're looking good relative to the other two bars.
Okay, and to finish up, these are, if you remember from last June, where the top 25 graduates came to the board meeting, you can see some of the selective schools that they and many of their classmates went to across the country. That's quite a list.
Billy will tell you that Bloomsburg was left off by mistake. He says every year.
That's what we gotta do to get it there.
Hey, you had a board president in Bloomsburg, we didn't put him up there, so you're not getting them now. You're definitely not getting them.
Just not letting the Huskies up there, Bill.
You can't the pressure that, you have no chance of that early or something. Thank you, guys. So I'll send you both PowerPoints. I'll send you that free and reduced lunch article for each school. And I'll get you those AP raw numbers. I'll work on that for you on Monday.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held on September 21st, 2017?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. We're going to move on to reports, and I'm happy to introduce Shane Fagan, senior class president. Welcome.
Okay, so yeah, I was here at the last meeting in September, and a lot has happened since then, especially school spirit-wise. We had the WBOE pep rally at the school, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it starts at 5 a.m. And WBOE comes out, they bring the crew, and we have a marching band and all the football team, and we filled up the entire half of the new gym. So that's probably a good couple hundred people in there. And I was watching the other week when we had Scranton, and they had about 20 kids outside on the field with about like 50 marching band people. So we really stood out, and we definitely made a statement with that. And ending that Spirit Week, we had the Spirit Games with the seniors and the sophomores, and then we had the Hazleton game the day after, so it was a very good way to end the week. For Spirit Day, for each month, it varies. Last Friday was Pink Out Friday for breast cancer awareness, and that was also our senior night game. So after that, we wore camo for Paw Pack. So a nice little combination of pink camo in the school. Bringing it back to just general things, we hosted the SATs and PSATs, going off of what the educator said earlier. PSATs, we've had many, this is for the new year with the juniors and the sophomores for national merit semifinalists and whatnot, so we'll find out those soon. Also, just for an athletics overview, girls field hockey won the district championship last night at Hazleton, and I don't think they've won since about 2000, that's what my friends were telling me, so that's a huge accomplishment. Girls soccer just won 7-0 before I got here. I'm not sure how boys soccer did.
They won 1-0.
1-0. All right.
That's
So
always checking.
so both of them should be in the district finals now. Both of them beat Scranton, I think, too.
They'll go to Williamsport next Wednesday. They beat Scranton tonight, so they'll both play Williamsport. I didn't miss my kid's his senior game. He won tonight, but he lives on for one more game.
So football is 9-0 right now. We're ranked 4th in the state, as MI was listed in 6A, which is the biggest classification. And we have the opportunity to be the first 10-0 team in DV history by going to Abington this Saturday. And also, girls tennis had a doubles team qualify for the district quarterfinals. And girls volleyball had their first playoff rounds. I'm not sure how they did that. So there's a lot going on at DV today, sports-wise. So they're going at the same time as boys soccer. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. So moving on to administrative reports, financial reports. Are there any comments on either? Start with administrative reports.
How many students do we have to the strengthening families program last year?
We didn't have to strengthen, it's new this year.
Oh, I thought we started it
Okay,
last
we
year.
had 9
Is it in
families.
Walpole back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before that. We've had 9 families sign up for it, and we've had 5 consistently coming. So it varies, some weeks we have more, other weeks you have less, but we're thrilled with the fact that we have 5 consistent.
Nice.
Any comments on financial reports? If not, we'll move on to Dr. Bell's report.
I promise to keep it brief. In your folder tonight, there's a handout about mental health services and activities that are going on. Maria and her team put this together. It covers mental health and counseling services, talks about suicide prevention and awareness programs, also talks about community partnerships. And in the back, it goes to a suicide crisis response guidelines. So that's just information for you, and some of the new things that are going on and some of the existing things that we're trying to enhance. And then we talked about the test scores that are in the folder as well. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is that our marching band, they had senior night at the football game last Friday night. They had to get up bright and early to head to Montvale, New Jersey for a regional competition, and they qualified for nationals. Isn't that amazing? And Billy Hessling was thrilled because the nationals, I'm waiting to hear they're in Chicago, Orlando, Atlanta, like all our national teams go all over the place, Anaheim. They're in Allentown, PA. So even this is only our third year, right?
That's pretty,
Third or
pretty
fourth.
impressive. That's really
Yeah, third or
incredible.
fourth, yeah.
Wow.
And we might need some electronics. We might need to purchase some electronics.
That was that was a loose, we had a scratchy Star Spangled Banner last week. We had a loose mic, I think, and the work goes into the turf. So we're working on that before the next 2 games. And that's it.
That's it, thank you. May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Who was Jack and Jack? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I now have a motion to accept the bills for payment, which include the general fund, cafeteria fund, and the capital reserve fund?
So moved.
Brian and Dawn, any discussion?
I just wanted to point out that once again, we're paying down $2.6 million of debt. And the rapid repayment of debt has been a hallmark of this board for many, many years. And it's what keeps us really liquid and solid. Good job to all of us.
Good record. Thank you, Jack. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve personnel items including resignations, appointments, child rearing leaves, extension of bereavement, and change of salary? And I would like to note that for 2 retirements, Sheena Keeling and Dr. Michael Vitelli are noted with regret.
Motion?
John and Chuck, any discussion?
Yeah, the 2 things that we talked about tonight about, we touched on the mental health and reading. And I noticed that these 2 retirements with regret are a reading teacher and a school psychologist. So we will be replacing those, those
Yes.
will be open
Yeah,
positions.
we're working on it now, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We're beating the drum to make sure we get some candidates, because school psychology is not a big field. So we're contacting colleges and seeing if we might entice some people from other districts and anything of that nature, because that's a big fill.
Yeah, and they both come out of the same school, so that's a big, big hit for
Right.
you, I think.
Do we have any pathways with Marywood in the program? I thought we did at one point.
Yeah, and their program's in flux right now. Their chairman of their program left in August, and everyone is scrambling. We heard that all the first-year students are leaving because the program's in doubt. Yeah. So we've talked to them, we've talked to Lehigh, we've talked to PCOM, a couple other places that we're trying to, we also advertised it on the gateway for PSBA, so the whole state would know. We ran an ad in the paper and on ZipRecruiter, because it's such a unique job, there's not a lot of people out there, so we gotta really beat the bushes to find something real quick. They're a hot commodity.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion now to move into executive session to discuss student issues?
Very brief, I promise.
Motions. So moved.
And second, John and Jackie.
Cookies. So moved. Second.
John and Chuck.
Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of Kristen Cummings to work with Vivian Bruno to complete her social work internship for Marywood University for 15 weeks in the fall semester and 15 weeks in the spring semester? So moved. Jessica and Jack, all those in favor say, oh, any discussion? I am trying to move it along, John. John, the last got a flu shot today, so.
I'll survive.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the recommendation for tenure for Adam Penberry and Jessica, and I would like to pronounce it correctly, Hubel.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
This Mr. Pembroke, the more I'm hearing of him and seeing of him, I'm very impressed. He's my daughter's teacher, and she had some problems, and I was really impressed by the way he took care of everything. It's nice to have somebody welcome a child that's going from an elementary into a middle, or from a middle to a high school. And very impressed with this guy. My wife actually met with him too, and she's very impressed. So I like what I see. It's just another person in Delaware Valley that we can have great confidence in.
So congratulations to both candidates, and you do send a letter right from the board. Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to readmit student 2016-2017 100-12310 effective October 2nd, 2017?
Second.
Jack and John, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the expulsion of student 2017-2018 1008700 for 180 school days with the right to reapply after 90 school days if items listed in stipulation are met?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the request for the waiver of rental fees for the following organizations, which were subject to approved insurance? Recognizing Excellence in Early Childhood Education, which was for October 9th, 2017, for their professional training, and loss of rental fees of approximately $15. The Pike County Developmental Center, who used the cafeteria on September 8th, who will use it September 8th, 2018, sorry, for their turkey tray and loss of rental fees of approximately $15. And Wandsworth Community High School will use the Delaware Valley High School 11-12 cafeteria on Saturday, November 4th, 2017, for their diabetes education seminar at a loss of rental fees of approximately $15.
Motion.
John
Second.
and Jack, all great endeavors. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the committed fund balance at June 30th, 2017, and transfers from the general fund to the capital reserve fund, and approval that the board plans to assign, commit, restrict resources in these or similar categories on the financial statements for the fiscal period ending June 30th, 2018, as per governmental accounting standards board statement number 54, GASB 54.
So moved. Second.
Brian and Jack, any discussion?
Yes. First off, really like to thank the work that was done financially this year. We had a 0% increased budget, and from that, we have $1.8 million left over. I'm gonna make a motion real quick. We've talked about it. If you can second at this point. I'd like to make a motion to continue the joint venture that we had talked about at previous meetings, and The motion is to give Pike County,
We have to wait, we have to finish this motion first.
Well, I think what Jack's getting at is if we approve this without that,
Yes,
then,
that's right.
then we have an
Oh,
issue.
so you want
so I have to make a
Hold on a
motion
second.
to change.
amendment?
But wait, this
And
is,
the amendment that I would ask for
Yeah,
is that,
I understand where he's at.
Okay.
yeah, but we're talking about 16-17 money,
I know,
not 17-18 money.
I understand.
Okay. Because we don't,
taking the money that would be going into capital reserve.
no, remember we talked about this last week, that if we were gonna do anything this year with any kind of like a picnic or something like that for the library, that it would come out of the new 17-18 budget, like perhaps say 10 grand out of budgetary reserve. The books are done for last year, so we can't take it out of last year's money, it would come out of the new budget.
Okay, so what should I do?
This already has a motion in the second to put the 197,000 into Peasers and then all that other money into capital reserve.
Okay, that's fine, I'll withdraw any motion I was gonna make.
We'll wait for your compadre over here. See if he has anything.
No, I agree. I knew where you were going on this. And I didn't know if you wanted to open up last year's books to do that. Okay, I would be against that, but I want to make sure we're talking 17-18.
Right.
Any additional Corey, you wanted to say something? Oh, okay. I thought initially you did. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the budgetary transfers from the 2016-17 fiscal year?
So moved.
Jack
Second.
and John, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve board policies listed 1 through 24?
Motion.
Corey and
Second.
John, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. And just note, please, that we are still reviewing board policies, which are listed 1 through 9. Julie will note in the minutes that they are under review. We're going to move on to other business. First from the board, Julie, I would like to thank you for our little gifts tonight. You always think of us. Thank you. And is there anything from other board members?
Yes. I would like to make a motion, since we're in a nicer financial state than we were in 5 minutes ago. Then we take $10,000 from anywhere you want and give it to the Pike.
Let's be more specific. Let's take the budgetary reserve.
Take $10,000 from budgetary reserve and enter into the joint venture, a one-time payment, and be reviewed after a year, I guess, to see if we're gonna continue to do this with the Pike County Public Library.
Second.
What's the amount you're suggesting, Jack?
$10,000.
And that's
So it's
So we have a first and a second.
first and second, we take a vote. Unless there's discussion.
We talked about, doing this when it was for specific programs or services. Is this being tied to anything like that, or just general?
Same programs and services that was offered. It's just, at the time, Chuck, we didn't have money to be doing it. And these guys did a great job. I mean, they say it was 4% out of the 0% budget. That's fantastic. Well, can we do that again next year, Bill? No, okay.
Probably not.
I'm just gonna always ask for it.
I just want to resist the terminology that we have money left over. I mean, that's not the right way, I think, to talk about the funds that we have. So,
I think going back to Chuck's comment is that if there was a one-time payment, then what you would want to do is, we'd ask the library to report back to us in writing about how they use that money and how it benefited our kids. And then you can use that as your barometer, whether you wanted to do it again in a subsequent year or not.
I was going to suggest, I'm sorry, Jessica, that we take this to our November workshop meeting and discuss the mechanics of it all, and also include possible discussion for the adult literacy program.
Well, that was my next comment, was we've heard really nice presentation tonight, and we know that socioeconomic issues are really important. So I was hoping we would actually allocate a little more money for each of the programs.
Yeah, I would definitely agree to go for the both, you know?
Would
Without,
it be okay if we wait for the work session to discuss it and then do
we've
a
waited
vote in
we've
November?
waited this long, you know, I'm sure that you're not going broke tomorrow, are you? You're not closing the
Hopefully
doors?
And if there's anything additional that you want to send us toward that discussion.
Well, we talked about this tonight, and this is a big issue, and I'm really glad that Pam brought you here, brought this to light with what goes on, because it ties in the whole thing. And, you know, I'd really like to get this up and running. And yes, without a doubt, it's just, to be quite honest with you, I've been trying to take credit for these folks behind you for over a year. So I didn't want to take on anything else tonight.
No, that's.
But if somebody else had made that motion like Jack Richard, I would be right on it too. I would definitely like to give you money as well.
I just appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak. May I make one statement now, and nothing to do with literacy, but as a parent? I'm very glad you invited me here tonight, because seeing the concern for the kids, and I have two here, one in 5th grade and a sophomore. Well, it reminds me of a quote from the master, Socrates. A student is not a vessel to be filled, but a lamp to be lighted. And with the critical thinking and everything that you're teaching, I am more impressed. My wife and I looked for over a year when we wanted to move to Pennsylvania. We wanted a great school district. That's how we ended up here. But I am so thankful that Ms. Lefty asked me here tonight to hear this and to see the numbers. Every one of you, thank you so very much on behalf of my children and my family. So,
You know, while our 3 doctors were presenting, it was going through my mind how fortunate it was that 3 of you were in the audience. Because, you know, you plan programs, you order books. You're gonna leave here thinking about some of the things we discussed this evening. I know that's what the 3 of you are about. So I'm glad you were here also.
And I just wanted to mention 2 things about the transfers tonight. One is, we say we have this money that didn't get spent, but we did spend it tonight. By allocating it to the capital reserve, we know we're going to spend every dollar of that. And if you think about back to your own budgets, you earn money in 1 year, but you might spend it years down the road. And that's the way we're operating for many years now. We're not just thinking about each individual year, but what's going to happen 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road. So that money that was transferred tonight is consumed in my mind already. It's the money that my second point is, at the meeting we had on budget back in June, I guess it was, at the very last moment, the board added $125,000 to the budgetary reserve. And we didn't know what we were going to use it for. But the majority thought it was a good thing to do that. And my thought at the time was the library. You know, that's where I was hoping some of that money would go. Your program likewise. So that if we could take of that 125 that is unallocated right now, and was a last minute add-on, take 25 of that and split it between these 2 fine groups, I think we're doing a real good service to our community. And I think that's what it's all about, what we're doing for the community. So we can discuss it in November. Don't wait till December, if I could ask that, because I won't be on the board at that point.
No, we're not putting you off. We have very productive work sessions. I think you've been to them, so you know. And this also gives the board an opportunity to contact you or contact John to get a message to you if you have additional questions or need more information.
So Pam and John, just a request from me, can we have for the board a history of our donations to the library going back to the time when it was an annual donation?
We can show that again. We have it. And we used to be as high as 35. Then it was cut in half to 17.5, right, Billy?
I just think it would be useful information.
Yes. Yeah, we'll give it to you again.
The best part that I heard about this whole argument was, and this is the best question, I ask a lot of questions everywhere I go. The best answer I got in 20 years, I asked the question to John Obleski. I said, you were on this board and you used to give money to the libraries. What did you get for it? And he said, we thought we got a better community. And that's the best answer. I don't want to add another defense to that, because that is the defense of doing this. You know, that is the best answer that I've heard in a long, long time. That's what we want here, is a better, tonight, all this book here, it's written on the back wall, I keep looking at it. All the secrets of the world are in the books. We want to give those to our children, and we want our children to understand what they're reading. And, thank you.
I have a motion.
Yeah, I know, we have a dangling,
And a second.
Okay, we can take a motion. Who did that, Jessica? All right, Jessica made a motion to table, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, that was my next one.
Well, Julie prompted me, so.
Oh, okay.
The dang-
Didn't they take the motion back though?
Is that a legal term?
That was the first motion you
Okay.
had.
Yeah.
The second one, you were looking for the 10,000.
Just make the motion, I'll take the motion off the table.
It's gone.
Can I just make one request before our workshop? If the library, if we could just send an email to Julie or John or Pam directly, listing just again, because it's been a while, the programs that you do in the two branches for, and I would also put in that, I believe I recall that you apply for a grant for money that comes directly to the school. So you do all the work for that. And then the new initiatives that you were looking to do specific to special needs, which is something that we seem to all be looking for, a way to get special needs to have some kind of a program. And then I would ask also for the literacy point, if we were to give money, where would that go? It's very helpful for us to know that when we're having that discussion. And what also often happens is we go in and have the discussion and don't have the answers, and then we don't come back, as you guys well know, you know. And I know there's certain of us who certainly don't want to see any of that money going to buying a parking lot. So that's why, if you can give us all that so we have it at our fingertips, that would be nice.
And our work session is on the 9th, so if you can get that info to me ahead of time,
That
I'll
would be
email it to
great.
the board so they have it ahead of time.
Yeah,
Good
thank you.
service.
Thank you, everyone. Two announcements. November 9th, 2017 is our work session, 7 o'clock at the administrative office. And November 16th, 2017 is our regular board meeting, 7 o'clock, also at the Delaware Valley Administrative Office. I hope to see you all there. Thank you for coming out tonight. Yes,
You don't know me, Ally. At the beginning of the school year, every year, I think it's the nurse sends it home about the height and weight and BMI of all the kids. I'm not understanding why that is sent to us and why the information is so incorrect, is the only word I can come up with for it. Is that a state mandated or federal, or why are we sent that information?
It is state mandated. The BMI letters are state mandated to be sent home, and actually it was brought up at our last meeting. And I believe, I won't speak for Dr. Farrell, but I know that she's been meeting with the nursing department to discuss a softer approach.
Yeah, the Department of Health actually gives us the letter that we sent out. There is an alternative form that we are looking at and possibly doing a combination of the two to make sure all the information is in there, but it is a requirement.
And one of the other issues too is it's gonna be emailed next year. It's gonna be emailed to parents instead of coming home in the mail and have the kids open it and see it. So.
Well, I was concerned about Ally was that any child would see those words, obese.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that, I mean, neither one of my children are anywhere near obese, but they fall on the high end of the BMI. They're not any obese, but, and Jessica can attest that Lincoln is nowhere near. He's a skinny mini, and he's close to being up at the high end of the BMI. And I can't imagine being a high school girl and seeing that, and being a regular or even underweight girl and getting that and thinking, oh my God, I'm obese. We're just adding to the problem with high school kids. So as a district, is there something that we can do to prevent
And that's,
that from?
at the work session, we were
Yeah.
going over, we were going over policies, and this was one of the big discussions that we had. And that's what, John's been working on it, so has Dr. Farrell, and, with the nursing staff and everything, because that was our concern as well.
Yeah.
And so we're certainly, they're certainly working on it, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Everyone in unison,